What's good, YouTube? It's Justice Ace to be paid, and today I'm back with another video. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about why I believe Future is one of the greatest rappers of all time. But before I get into that, make sure you leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Do all those things. It helps me out a ton. When talking about the greatest rapper of all time, we all know the names that are typically thrown into that discussion. You know, Jay-Z, Nas, Tupac, Biggie, Lil Wayne, Kendrick Lamar sometimes, Drake sometimes, Andre 3000. Like, we all know the names that are typically associated with that conversation. But what I'm here to do today in this video is to make the argument that Future deserves to be in the conversation with these guys as well. Andre 3000 is another one. But I think that Future deserves to be mentioned in the same echelon as these artists. Now, I'm not here advocating today for Future to be the greatest rapper of all time. That's not what I'm doing. I just don't personally believe that. But I do believe that he's on a similar caliber to these guys. Like, when we're talking about these discussions, I don't think it's ridiculous to throw his name in there. I don't. Now, some people might say it's ridiculous to throw Drake's name in there, or some people think the same thing with Kendrick. But for the most part, those guys are kind of readily accepted into the conversation by most, right? Most people will at least hear you out if you say Kendrick's the greatest rapper of all time. I don't think it's ridiculous to throw Future in that conversation, personally. Now, I don't think he's the GOAT because, in my opinion, I know you're probably wondering, I believe that Kanye West is the GOAT. He is my greatest rapper of all time. So just to give you my opinion on things before I really break it down and go further into things. So I'm not just going to sit up here and be a guy who's playing the fence and be like, I don't know what. Kanye's the GOAT, in my opinion. But Future deserves to be in this same class of rappers in terms of respect and in terms of admiration, in my opinion. Now, that's not for me to say that Future gets no love and no admiration, because he does. He gets a lot. Future's probably one of the most well-liked rappers in the game. Like, there's not that many people who hate on Future. I don't really go on Twitter and see Future haters, see people, you know, talking about how bad Future is. At least not anymore, maybe about 10 years ago, but not anymore. You don't really see that. So he does get a lot of love, but what really inspired me to make this video is the list from Complex that listed the greatest rappers from Atlanta ever. And Future was on that list, and he was listed at number 2. Now, I'm not sitting here making this video to be like, oh my gosh, they lowballed Future. He should have automatically been 1. I can't believe it. But it just kind of inspired me to make this video and to talk about Future in an all-time great context, because I feel like his name, even outside of like, oh, do you put him in the GOAT conversation? Do you consider him a top 10 rapper of all time? Even despite all that, I feel like we just don't talk about what Future is enough in terms of an all-time great conversation. We always have that conversation with Drake. Oh, where is he? Where does he rank? We always have that conversation with Kendrick, but we don't really talk about where Future sits in an all-time category. We don't really talk about what his legacy really is. So that's what inspired me to make this video. And yeah, I think the placement of Future at 2, personally, just to give my opinion again, I think that's a good placement. I'm not mad at that. I personally would have him as 1. I wouldn't put 3K above Future. Personally, if we're just talking solo music, I don't put 3K above Future. Now, if you're talking about group stuff, okay, if you want to put Outkast ahead of Future on the list, I can agree with that. But if we're just looking at what they've done as an individual, and we're looking at Andre 3000, and we're looking at Future, it's easily Future to me. So that's my opinion on the list. I think he should have been number 1. But again, it's not like they lowballed him, so it doesn't matter. I just wanted to make a video talking about him in an all-time great context because that article specifically inspired me to. The first thing that should be mentioned when we're talking about Future in like an all-time great context, in the context of his legacy, has to be his influence. I don't know if there's a single rapper, like any one specific rapper, who's as influential in terms of sound as Future. Now, there are other names you can throw in there. You know, Wayne, you can throw in 50 Cent, Rakim if you want to go back all the way there. Like, there are other names who are very influential to rap. But in terms of the sound, at least me personally, and, you know, of course, we can always argue these things, I think that Future is the single most influential in terms of how music today sounds. Specifically, trap music. If we want to look at the subgenre of trap, because that's the type of music Future makes, trap music before Future, like T.I., Jeezy, even like Gucci Mane, it sounds nothing like what really, well, not nothing, but it doesn't sound like what we have today, especially if you go back like 5 years ago. What Future did with the trap game and the way that it sounds has never been done before. He completely changed the entire future, no pun intended, of trap music. Completely changed it. It completely metamorphosed into a whole new thing when Future came into the game. The melodic auto-tune and a multitude of different Future flows have basically changed the game, and everyone in rap has started to kind of adapt these things. The best comparison that I can give for Future in the rap space to something outside of rap is Steph Curry. If you know anything about the game of basketball, you know how revolutionary and influential Steph Curry is to the space of basketball. He's arguably the most influential player ever. Arguably. I'm not going to say he is, but like, he's one of the most influential people to ever pick up a basketball. He's completely changed how the sport literally exists today. He's completely revolutionized everything. Before Steph Curry became as successful as he is right now, or even as he was 10 years ago, there were people that were really saying things like, jump shooting teams can't win a championship. That was a real narrative in the basketball space. And you know what? It was fairly true up until Curry. Fairly true, fairly accurate. I mean, you could argue some of those later Spurs teams were jump shooting teams, but for the most part, that was a fairly true statement in basketball. Jump shooting teams can't win a championship before Steph Curry. Just like how in rap, people didn't look at melodic auto-tune rappers as real rappers. People didn't even want to consider Future a rapper sometimes in the earlier parts of his career. And it's not like Future's the first person to come in with this melodic auto-tune sound. We had T-Pain, but like I mentioned previously, like 10 seconds ago, people didn't really respect that all the way in the rap space. T-Pain, while yes, people enjoyed his music, people loved him, he didn't get that respect that a lot of other artists that honestly he deserved got back then. So he kind of came in, Future kind of came in, and he wasn't the first person to do what he did, but he was the one that really changed the game. Curry and Future not only changed how individuals looked at their respective sport and how they played it, but it also changed the entire game. The entire way teams were schemed changed after Steph Curry. People started shooting more threes as a team. People started scheming around threes. That's how you get teams like those James Harden Rockets teams towards the end of his run there, where they're just hoisting up threes. They probably did shoot more threes than the Warriors, I'm pretty sure. So that's how you started to see the influence start to creep into other things. And that kind of happened with trap and Future as well, because trap went from a subgenre that was pretty popular in rap, arguably one of the most popular, to the most popular subgenre in the world. Trap music towards like the mid 2010s, late 2010s was the most popular sound in music, not just in rap, but in music in general. And a large part of that is because of the revolution that came with Future when he entered the game. And it completely changed not only, again, rap, but just music in general. And especially the future of rap, no pun intended again. Look at the guys that came up after Future. Pretty much anyone that came up after Future and has like mainstream success at this point, any sort of mainstream success, has at least a little bit of Future in them. Lil Baby, Gunna, Cardi, even Travis Scott, Uzi. These guys all have something. Trippie Redd. They all have a little bit of Future in them. Juice WRLD, R.I.P. They all have some Future in their game. But much like Curry, not only did Future affect the guys that were going to come after him, he affected the guys that were playing at the exact same time as him, and even some of the guys who have been playing for a little bit longer than him. Curry's influence didn't just help guys like Trae Young or, influence guys like Trae Young. Look at LeBron. LeBron started to expand his game. Of course, he was already shooting threes, but he started to expand his game more and really realized the importance of that three-point shot personally for himself and started to shoot a lot more of those. Look at somebody like Brook Lopez. I'm sure Brook Lopez didn't start shooting threes because, oh my gosh, look at Steph Curry. He's so great. I want to be like him. No, but because Curry changed the game and heightened the importance of the three-point shot, Brook Lopez was forced to get a three-point shot if he wanted to continue to play in the NBA past the prime of him, scoring in the low post. So he saw the world surrounding him and said, oh crap, this is changing. Let me learn how to shoot from 40 feet. And he did that. And because of that, he's extended his career by probably a couple of years and tens of millions of dollars at this point. Future has influenced a lot of the guys who are in the same class as him or around the same age or around the same generation. Look at someone like Drake. Drake got pretty much all of his trap flows in the beginning kind of from Future. And the Migos a little bit. But a lot of that stuff was from Future, the way he makes his trap music even still to this day. Now, not everyone's going to completely change their way of making music to sound like Future. Not everyone does that. But you can still look at a lot of these guys. A lot of these guys at least develop some Future into their game. Kind of like how nowadays you kind of need a jump shot to be a good NBA player. You kind of need to be able to shoot the ball. Very rarely are there guys who are really, really good and dominant without shooting the ball like Giannis. It's kind of a rarity now. You need to be able to shoot. You kind of need to have Future in your game to be a successful mainstream rapper. Kendrick added some Future in his game. Cole added some Future in his game. Meek Mill added some Future in his game. These guys didn't completely change the way that they sound, but they saw what was happening in the space and said, okay, I got to add that to my bag. Kind of like how people saw what was changing in basketball with Curry's arrival and said, I got to add that into my bag. And honestly, just as important, maybe even more important, Future changed the way that fans accept and listen to rap and really expanded the average rap fan, or really any rap fan's palate over the last 10 to 12 years that he's been going on this kind of run that he's been on. Because in the beginning, Future caught a lot of slack for his emphasis on flows and vocals and hooks rather than necessarily lyrics. Not to say that he's a terrible lyricist, but that he wasn't really too hyper focused on that. And because of that, he got a lot of slack for that. He got a lot of people calling him trash, saying he's not even a real rapper, saying that what he's doing is terrible and it's ruining the rap space. Future caught a lot of real criticism early on to his run. People really weren't as high on Future as they are now. You know, like people nowadays pretty much all love Future. Back then, there was still a lot of pushback on Future. A lot of people didn't really want to accept him, especially those real hip hop head fans, like the fans who really care about that lyricism and really are passionate about that side of things. They didn't really like Future. Similar to Curry in the beginning when he was shooting all those jumpers, and yeah, they were going in the regular season, but you know, if he didn't win in the playoffs, people were like, see, I told you it couldn't work, until it eventually did. One of the most impressive things, honestly, I think this might be the most impressive thing that Future can put into his like list of accolades, is the fact that he has guys like Joe Budden on his side now. Joe Budden, he might not be like the biggest Future fan, but he respects Future. He likes Future as an artist now. Joe Budden respects Future as an artist. That's one of his biggest accomplishments. Getting guys like Joe Budden and like fans of that similar kind of style, to get those fans to respect him now as a great artist and a great rapper, that's really impressive. Because this would not have happened 10 years ago. It wouldn't have happened. So for him to be able to flip those guys shows you how important his influence is, not only on other rappers, but not only on the sound of how rap sounds, but the fans as well. And what people are willing to accept, fans and critics alike, what they're willing to accept in the palette of rap. He's completely changed that as well and had a massive influence there as well. Getting the hippity hop fans on his side when he's making songs talking about Percocet, Molly Percocet, is insane. Like, I just want that to be noted. But even for the guys who came out around the same time as Future and share similar flows and similar sounds at times, like Migos or Young Thug, I think that he did influence those guys. But even if you want to say he didn't influence them whatsoever, they just kind of, you know, came out around the same time and they were from similar areas, Future was the one to kind of take the initial licks. What I mean by that is he took the initial punishment to kind of, you know, get through the door, and then they can come in too as well and, you know, face a little bit less backlash. Of course, all of those artists like the Migos and Young Thug, they still faced a lot of backlash for the way that they made music. But I feel like Future made it a little bit more normal to fans so that, like, when they came in, they didn't have to take as much punishment as they probably would have, even though Young Thug still took a lot of licks because Young Thug was on some other stuff. He was doing a whole bunch of crazy stuff. So he still took a lot of licks. I'm not going to sit up here and act like because of Future, Young Thug got no criticism. Of course he did. But I just think that he made it a little bit easier for those guys to kind of break in and have that sound be accepted. Future's even had a lot of influence in the like R&B space as, you know, one of the best like relationship, love song, women's song, toxic song makers that is a, you know, rapper or a trap rapper. And recently I saw a YouTube video speaking on the male R&B space and how it's like kind of dead or something like that. And it's from a YouTuber I really like. Her name is Cameron Suzanne. I don't know her whatsoever. This is free promo for her. I think that her content's great. But she was talking about how R&B from the men specifically has completely changed from what it used to be, right? They used to be, you know, singing these belting ballads about their heartbreak and how much they love their woman and singing in the rain about being heartbroken and how they miss their girl and they'll do anything, to nowadays they're making these, you know, toxic love songs that are in these monotone kind of auto-tune flows. And they're also, you know, talking about women in a somewhat misogynistic manner. They're calling them, you know, hoes and bitches and all that type of stuff. And they're making music that sounds like Future. They're making toxic love songs that sound a lot like Future. She basically attributed a lot of this to like the influx of like rap music into R&B in the late 2000s, early 2010s. But regardless, the point being, Future has even had influence in R&B, and that's not even a space that he, was really targeting, I don't think. I mean, of course he makes the love songs and stuff and the toxic anthems, but it's like I don't even think that was his intention. But nowadays, listen to a lot of these guys, a lot of their stuff sounds like Future. So he even has pull and influence in the R&B space. Outside of the influence, Future has some of the greatest longevity that we've probably ever seen in rap. Now, Future is 40 years old, if you don't know, which is crazy as hell, I know. But he's been in this mainstream run since probably around 2012. So we're coming up on like 13 years now at this point. And now other rappers have had super long careers or longer careers than Future, where they're still having success at the end of their careers or 15, 20 years in. So it's not like he's the first person to ever have really great longevity in rap. But I just think it's a little bit different with Future because he is still one of the top rappers in terms of cultural influence and in terms of how important they are to the rap culture today, right? Because some guys can go on for a really long time and be making great music and still doing well and still doing numbers, but they're not that important to that modern rap space's culture, right? You get what I'm saying? Like right now, Nas is doing fantastic. He's doing great. But in terms of like modern rap space's culture, I don't think he's really that important. I know that sounds disrespectful, but you understand what I'm trying to say. Like, he's still relevant. He's still doing his thing. But, like, we're not getting Nas headlines every day just based on whatever he's doing on social media. Like, he's not somebody that is currently shifting rap culture still. Again, no offense, but you understand what I'm trying to say. Look at somebody like Eminem. Eminem is still super dominant with his numbers. He's still putting up hundreds of thousands in his first week, but he's not super culturally relevant to rap right now. He's not somebody that's impacting rap culture. Like, look at Kanye. Kanye is old as hell, but he's still really pivotal to current day modern rap culture. And Future is still that to this day. And I think that that's super impressive. Most rappers tend to have a very short shelf life when it comes to like being super important to the culture and super culturally relevant. And also one of the top rappers, that's typically like 4 to 5 years worth of a run for a lot of rappers. And it's really impressive for Future that he's been able to do this as well without taking a whole bunch of huge breaks. Future is always dropping music. Like more often than not, he drops multiple projects within a year. So the fact that he's been doing this for this long and still consistently active almost every single year, dropping a whole bunch of music, that's extra impressive because a lot of the times when guys have really long runs, they'll end up really spaced out. Like look at somebody like Travis Scott. Travis Scott has been one of the top guys in rap for like a decade now, since around 2015, 16 16 is really when he like started to blow up as like one of the top guys, with like the song Antidote, like at the end of 2015. But Travis takes breaks in between his projects, right? Astroworld comes out in 2018. Utopia comes out in 2023. That's a 5-year break. Now, he probably didn't orchestrate it on purpose to be a 5-year break. It just ended up being that way. But like, that's a long time for fans to want you to come back, for people to want to see you come back. Distance makes the heart grow fonder, right? But Future is in our face every single year, dropping new music, and still has not worn out his welcome yet. People aren't sick of Future yet. You don't see a whole bunch of think pieces like, man, when is Future gonna stop making music, bro? Like, damn, bro, like how many times are you gonna keep dropping? You don't see people posting that Young Thug meme, the stop dropping all that BS music. You don't see that with Future. People aren't sick of him. And I think that's equally as impressive as having a long run. If you're dropping 2 projects a year, 2 to 3 albums every 3 years, and nobody's sick of you yet, after 14 years, 12 years, 13 years, however long it's been, that's really impressive to stay that culturally relevant for that long without the fans having burnout. I think a lot of people right now are going through Drake burnout. I think that's a topic that I could talk about later, but there's a lot of Drake burnout right now and think pieces, Drake just needs to go away. Can we get a break from Drake? But you don't really see that for Future. And maybe, Drake's bigger and obviously he's being put into the light more than Future, but still, Future's still one of the top 10 guys. So to not see that yet is impressive. It's not just his longevity and his influence as well, because he has a very strong and deep discography. Future has been one of the most consistent rappers that we've ever seen in the position that he's in right now as one of the top dogs. He consistently drops projects, like I said, oftentimes multiple a year. And for him to not have a run of just constant regression yet is very impressive, because mostly, in rap or pretty much with anything, when we think about quantity and quality, the conversation always ends up being that when you drop a whole bunch of quantity, the quality tends to go away. But we really haven't seen that with Future yet. Now, of course, he has a whole bunch of projects, and when you have as much music out as Future does, you're going to have some stinkers here and there, all right? You're going to have some projects that aren't the best. But in general, we haven't seen a consistent run of regression from Future yet. Even at the age of 40, he's coming off of 2 projects with Metro Boomin that were pretty much well received by most of the rap space. Most rap fans enjoyed the project. Most rap critics enjoyed both of those projects. And he also had a whole bunch of high charting songs on both of those projects. Future also has one of the most transformative albums in the history of the genre with Dirty Sprite 2. That was kind of the blueprint for everything that ended up coming after it in the trap space. It's also an amazing album in my opinion and can go head to head with pretty much any of the all-time greats' best album. Now, and is it always going to be better? No, of course not. But I think it can go up there with them, especially if we're talking about influence on the space. It's definitely up there if we're talking about that. His self-titled album is also amazing. His other album that's also kind of self-titled, Hendrix, is a great album, even though it tends to go into more of the R&B and pain music, toxic relationship music space. That's also a great album. He also has some hidden gems in his discography, in my opinion, like an album like High Off Life. I love that project, and it's not always, talked about as one of his best, but I really do enjoy that project. Or we can look at the collab album, What a Time to Be Alive with Drake. That's a great, fantastic project where throughout most of it, he's kind of outperforming Drake. I don't think that's a hot take to say that Future was probably the best part of What a Time to Be Alive. But where Future really makes his money, for lack of a better term, is mixtapes. That's really where he eats. And of the modern era, he's easily far and away the best mixtape rapper. I really don't think it's close. Now, of course, people are going to bring up Wayne because him and Wayne are around the same age, but Wayne did most of his damage in the 2000s, right? The early 2000s to late 2000s, before Future even really made a name for himself. But if we're looking at the 2010s and beyond, it's quite easily Future, and it's not even close. Here's just a short list of some of the mixtapes he has to his name. Honest, Monster, Beast Mode, 56 Nights, Purple Rain. And I know that the era of the 2010s when we're talking about mixtapes is probably the weakest era of mixtapes. I mean, I guess you could say today is, but they don't even really exist at this point. But the 2010s is a very weak era for mixtapes in comparison to the 2000s when Wayne was kind of the king of mixtapes or one of the kings of mixtapes. So you can probably, you can dock some points there because he competed in a weak era. But I look at Future in terms of how his mixtapes were so dominant in the 2010s, how I look at Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in the 70s, right? Kareem was dominating the 70s. Now, is that a super weak era in NBA history? Yes, of course. Was there not that much competition for Kareem? You can say that, but it doesn't take away from the greatness that Kareem had during that era. Yes, you can acknowledge the fact that the era was weak, but at the same time, you can still acknowledge the greatness that happened in that era. So Future is one of the greatest mixtape rappers that we've ever seen, especially in this modern era. It's not close. He's easily number 1. And in terms of hits, he's one of the greatest hit makers of all time. Full stop. All genres. I don't care what anyone says. Future is one of the greatest hit makers of all time. Especially in that club and party scene, Future's arguably probably one of the best club and party rappers you can have. You can literally host a 2 to 3 hour DJ session of straight Future music, straight Future bangers. And I don't just mean songs that are good that you like by Future. I mean songs that pretty much everyone's gonna know that are hits. I don't just mean, I like this song, let me play it, it's gonna sound good. No, songs that everyone's gonna know and want to turn up to in the club. He's one of the greatest club artists of all time. In terms of hit makers and rap specifically, not even just in rap, and let's just talk music. He is the third artist of all time, the third solo artist on the Billboard Hot 100 in terms of entries. The third solo artist on the Billboard Hot 100s in terms of entries. Let me say it again, just so people can really understand. He's third in Billboard Hot 100 entries as a solo artist. All genres. Only people above him, I believe, are Drake and Taylor Swift in terms of entries into the Hot 100. That's insane. He has more entries into the Hot 100 than Wayne, than Kanye, than anybody else that I haven't named. That should show you the type of hit maker that Future is. Really, outside of Drake, he's the greatest hit maker in rap history. Drake's the only guy you can put above him. And I'm taking points away from Drake in this conversation just to boost up Future because Future can't make pop songs, or he doesn't really make a lot of pop songs like Drake can. Future doesn't make I need a one dance. He doesn't make music like that. Pretty much 99.9% of his music is targeted to the hip hop space. Now, of course, Future's done pop features and stuff and songs that are, easily accepted by pop fans and stuff like that. Not to say he has no space in the pop space, but that's just not where his music is typically targeted. 99% of his music is targeted at rap fans. And of course, casuals can jump in and listen because he's enjoyable to listen to. But that's the difference between him and Drake. Drake's doing all this while having appeal to every music listener Every single music listener can listen to Drake and enjoy it because he just, does so many different things. Future really kind of stays in the rap bubble. Of course, he does different things, but in the rap genre, and he's up there as one of the greatest hit makers of all time. His longevity in the club scene is unmatched. He might just be the greatest club rapper of all time. Future is also one of, if not the greatest feature artists of all time. Pretty much everyone that's ever meant anything to the rap game in the last 15 years has a Future feature. That's not even an exaggeration. Future is on everyone's projects. He's the one that they always call. Whenever somebody's making a call for features, he's at the very, very top of the list. And that's because he goes out and he performs on these features. Oftentimes, when he shows up on somebody's song, he is the most memorable part of the song. He might not always have the best part, but he's one of the most memorable parts of the song if he shows up as a feature. Getting a feature from Future is literally like getting your driver's license. If you are anybody who's been a mainstream rapper past the year of 2010 for longer than 4 to 5 minutes, you have a feature from Future. It's just how it works. It's just part of the game. It's just like learning how to ride your bike as a kid. It's just something that you do. It just happens. The only person that I can think of that's been a mainstream successful artist past the year of 2012 that doesn't have a feature from Future is J. Cole, I believe. Outside of that, pretty much everyone else has at least one feature from Future, and that's not an accident. Future is also one of the greatest hook writers in the history of music, not just rap, in music history. Future's hooks are part of the reason why he's as big as he is today. Future first got on just by people hearing these crazy hooks and them catching people's ears and just sticking with them and just being super catchy. His hooks, I think that he is the greatest hook maker in hip hop history. Now, he might be, I think it's either him or Drake in my opinion, but I think he slightly beats out Drake. Whenever Future gets a call to be on somebody's song, guess what? More times than not, he's the hook. And that's not by accident. Again, you don't just get random features to be your hook all the time. You go and get them specifically. When it's a big group song, when there's 4 to 5 features, guess who's the hook on that song? It's Future. Again, not by accident. So Future not only is a great feature artist, one of the best ever in hip hop, I think he's probably the greatest hook artist, hook creator in the history of hip hop. There's nobody else who can go hook for him as long as he can go. That's why he really started to get on, is because of his hooks. So I wanted to add that in there as well. Not only is he great in terms of influence, not only does he have a deep discography, but his hook game is probably the best that we've ever seen in the rap space. The main thing that you can try and hold against Future with is his lyricism and the lack of depth in his pen. And you know what? You got it. He does not have the same depth in his pen as a lot of the guys in the top discussion of greatest rappers of all time, which for some people is the most important thing in the conversation, right? They're rappers, they're poets. They need to have deep poetry, right? But I don't think he's as bad of a lyricist as people sometimes give him a rap for. I don't think he's really that bad. Is he one of the greatest lyricists of all time? No, I'm not an idiot. But I think that he is a good lyricist. I don't think that Future gets washed very often when he's going up against somebody, when somebody has a feature on his. I don't think he gets washed very often. The first and only thing I can think of at the moment, of course I could look through and be like, oh, well, this person did better. But the main thing is the Kendrick verse that just came out this year, obviously. But Kendrick went in there to go and body Drake and Cole. So of course he was going to come out, with the shining star on his head. But Future's not a bad lyricist. He's not. He's a good lyricist. He is. I think a lot of the stigma surrounding Future's lyricism comes from the fact that early on in his career, he didn't enunciate his words. And people really didn't get that yet. They're like, why is this dude? Why is he? He didn't enunciate his words very well. And also at the same time, he was very repetitive in a lot of his songs, especially earlier on, 2012 to 2014. There was a lot of repetition, and people just hear repetition and immediately think terrible. For some reason, that's just where they go to. So that rap of him being a bad lyricist, I think it's a bad narrative. I think it's a false narrative, but he's not one of the greatest lyricists of all time. I'll give you that. So if you want to disqualify him from the conversation solely based on the fact that he doesn't have the deepest pen, I can't really fight you on that. But if we're talking about everything thrown into one, I think he's up there in that conversation. Just look at him and Drake, right? When him and Drake collabed, oftentimes he's better. Oftentimes he is the one with the better verse on the song. And Drake is a great lyricist. I know a lot of people won't give him that credit, and that's a whole other discussion. But very least, you can acknowledge, even if you're the biggest Drake hater, that he's at least a good lyricist, right? And on a majority of their songs, I feel like Future ends up with the better verse. On at least half. Let's just say at least half for the sake of the video, even though I think it's more. He is going toe-to-toe with Drake consistently on who has the better verse. I think that says a lot in terms of his lyricism. So I don't think he's a complete trash artist. He's just not somebody that's going to go super deep with their pen unless it's a love song, unless it's a song like Cody and Crazy, unless it's a song where he's really talking about his emotions and his feelings, which I think gives him a lot of points. So we can't just say that he's a bad lyricist. He gives it his all on certain songs. Now, oftentimes, the songs that blow up are the songs where he's just kind of vibing, having fun. But Future's not a bad lyricist, but he's not one of the greatest lyricists of all time. So if you want to dock him points for that, fine. If you want to dock Kanye points for that as well, fine. But I think they still make some of the greatest rap music that's ever been made. For one man to come in and have the impact that he had on not just rap, but music in general, I think that warrants him being in the all-time great conversation. The combination of his discography, his longevity, and his influence alongside the hits, the countless hits, the party scene domination, club scene domination, makes him one of the greatest of all time. You don't have to say he is the greatest. I wouldn't say that, but I think that he deserves to be in that conversation. And I will leave this video with a hot take just to piss you off if you've made it this far. Recently, there was a post going around that said, who's greater all time, 50 Cent or Future? And I'm here to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that it's Future. Take that with whatever you want to take that with. Be upset at it. Be mad at it. I think it's true. I think Future's greater than 50 Cent all time. Does he have an album like Get Rich or Die Trying? No. But his discography is way deeper. His longevity has been way longer in terms of actually in the rap space and being relevant in the rap space. And also his influence on the sound is way stronger. I think 50 Cent is not a greater rapper all time than Future. I think Future's above 50 Cent. That's going to piss a lot of people off, but that's just my hot take to end the video. But if you made it this far, I greatly appreciate you. Have a good day. Be safe. Be blessed. Make sure you leave a like, comment, subscribe. Do all those things. It helps me out a ton. I go by the name of Pay. Peace.